The body in flow. A man possesses nothing, suddenly save a brief loan of his own body, wrote J. Baker Bell. Yet the body of man is capable of much curious pleasure. When we are unhappy, depressed, or bored, we have an easy remedy at hand to use the body for all it is worth. Most people nowadays are aware of the importance of health and physical fitness, but the almost unlimited potential for enjoyment that the body offers often remains unexploited. Few learn to move with the grace of an acrobat, see with the fresh eye of an artist, feel the joy of an athlete who breaks his own record, taste with the subtlety of a connoisseur, or love with a skill that lifts sex into a form of art. Because these opportunities are easily within reach, the easiest step toward improving the quality of life consists in simply learning to control the body and its senses. Everything the body can do is potentially enjoyable, yet many people ignore this capacity and use their physical equipment as little as possible, leaving its ability to provide flow unexploited. When left undeveloped, the senses give us chaotic information. An untrained body moves in random and clumsy ways. An insensitive eye, an insensitive eye presents ugly or uninteresting sights. The unmusical ear mainly hears jarring noises. The coarse palate knows only insipid taste. If the functions of the body are left to atrophy, the quality of life becomes merely adequate and for some even dismal. But if one takes control of what the body can do and learns to impose order on physical sensations, entropy yields to a sense of enjoyable harmony in consciousness. The human body is capable of hundreds of separate functions: seeing, hearing, touching, running, swimming, throwing, catching, climbing up mountains, and climbing down caves, to name only a few, and to each of these there correspond flow experiences. In every culture, enjoyable activities have been invented to suit the potentialities of the body. When a normal physical function, like running, is performed in a socially designed, goal-directed setting with rules that offer challenges and require skills, it turns into a flow activity. Whether jogging alone, racing the clock, running against competition, or like the Tarahumara Indians of Mexico, who race hundreds of miles in the mountains during certain festivals, adding an elaborate ritual dimension to the activity. The simple act of moving the body across space becomes a source of complex feedback that provides optimal experience and adds strength to the self. Each sensory organ, each motor function can be harnessed to the production of flow. Before exploring further how physical activity contributes to optimal experience, it should be stressed that the body does not produce flow merely by its movements. The mind is always involved as well. To get enjoyment from swimming, for instance, one needs to cultivate a set of appropriate skills which requires the concentration of attention. Without the relevant thoughts, motives, and feelings, it would be impossible to achieve the discipline necessary to learn to swim well enough to enjoy it. Moreover, because enjoyment takes place in the mind of the swimmer, flow cannot be a purely physical process. Muscles and brain must be equally involved. Higher, faster, stronger. Flow experiences based on the use of physical skills do not occur only in the context of outstanding athletic feats. Olympians do not have an exclusive gift in finding enjoyment in pushing a performance beyond existing boundaries. Every person, no matter how unfit he or she is, can rise a little higher, go a little faster, and grow to be a little stronger. The joy of surpassing the limits of the body is open to all. Even the simplest physical act becomes enjoyable when it is transformed so as to produce flow. The essential steps in this process are A. To set an overall goal and as many sub-goals as are realistically feasible. B. To find ways of measuring progress in terms of the goals chosen. C. To keep concentrating on what one is doing and to keep making finer and finer distinctions in the challenges involved in the activity. D. To develop the skills necessary to interact with the opportunities available. And E. To keep raising the stakes if the activity becomes boring. A good example of this method is the act of walking, which is as simple a use of the body as one can imagine, yet which can become a complex flow activity, almost an art form. A great number of different goals might be set for a walk. For instance, the choice of the itinerary, where one wishes to go and by what route. Within the overall route, one might select places to stop or certain landmarks to see. Another goal may be to develop personal style, a way to move the body easily and efficiently. An economy of motion that maximizes physical well-being is another obvious goal. For measuring progress, the feedback may include how fast and how easily the intended distance were covered, how many interesting sights one has seen, and how many new ideas or feelings were entertained along the way. The challenges of the activities are what force us to concentrate. The challenges of a walk will vary greatly depending on the environment. For those who live in large cities, flat sidewalks and right angle layouts make the physical act of walking easy. Walking on a mountain trail is another thing altogether. For a skilled hiker, each step presents a different challenge to be resolved with a choice of the most efficient foothold that will give the best leverage, simultaneously taking into account the momentum and the center of gravity of the body and the various surfaces, dirt, rocks, roots, grass, branches on which the foot can land. On a difficult trail, an experienced hiker walks with economy of motion and lightness, and the constant adjustment of her steps to the terrain reveals a highly sophisticated process of selecting the best solution to a changing series of complex equations involving mass, velocity, and friction. Of course, these calculations are usually automatic and give the impression of being entirely intuitive, almost instinctive. But if the walker does not process the right information about the terrain and fails to make the appropriate adjustment in her gait, she will stumble or will soon grow tired. So while this kind of walking might be entirely unselfish, self-conscious, it is in fact a highly intense activity that requires concentrated attention. In the city, the terrain itself is not challenging, but there are other opportunities for developing skills. The social stimulation of the crowds, the historical and architectural references of the urban milieu can add enormous variety to a walk. There are store windows to see, people to observe, patterns of human interaction to reflect on. Some walkers specialize in choosing the shortest routes, others the most interesting ones. Some pride themselves in walking the same route with chronometric precision. Others like to mix and match their itinerary. In winter, some aim to walk as long as possible on the sunny stretches of the sidewalk and to walk as much in the shade as possible in the summer. There are those who time their crossings exactly for when the traffic lights change to green. Of course, the chances for enjoyment must be cultivated. They don't just happen automatically to those who do not control their itinerary. Unless one set goals and develops skills, walking is just features, featureless. drudgery. Walking is the most trivial physical activity imaginable, yet it can be profoundly enjoyable if a person sets goals and takes control of the process. On the other hand, the hundreds of sophisticated forms of sport and body culture currently available, ranging from racquetball to yoga, from bicycling to martial arts, may not be enjoyable at all if one approaches them with the attitude that one must take part in them because they are fashionable or simply because they are good for one's health. Many people get caught up in a treadmill of physical activity over which they end up having little control, feeling duty bound to exercise but not having any fun doing it. They have made the usual mistake of confounding form and substance and assume that create actions and events are the only reality that determines what they experience. For such individuals, joining a fancy health club should be almost a guarantee that they will enjoy themselves. However, enjoyment, as we have seen, does not depend on what you do, but rather on how you do it. In one of our studies, we addressed the following questions. Are people happier when they use more material resources in their leisure activities, or are they happier when they invest more of themselves? We try to answer these questions with the experience sampling method, ESM, the procedure I developed at the University of Chicago to study the quality of experience. As described earlier, this method consists of giving people electronic pages of papers and a booklet of response sheets. A radio transmitter is programmed to send signals about 8 times a day at random intervals for a week. Each time the page signals, respondents fill out a page of the booklet, indicating whether they are and what they are doing and with whom, and rating their state of mind on a variety of dimensions, such as a 7-point scale ranging from very happy to very sad. What we found was that when people were pursuing leisure activities that were expensive in terms of the outside resources required, activity that demand expensive equipment or electricity or other forms of energy measured in BTUs, such as power boating, driving, or watching television, they were significantly less happy than when involved in inexpensive leisure. People were happiest when they were just talking to one another, when they garden, needed, or were involved in a hobby. All of those activities require few material resources, but they demand a relatively high investment of psychic energy. Leisure that uses up external resources, however, often requires less attention, and as a consequence, it generally provides less memorable rewards.